What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here. So obviously I missed the past couple games, and I watched them but didn't have time to do a review. So just a quick recap summary of my thoughts over those two. First of all, the Brentford game. Um, Obviously a good result, but pretty disappointing performance overall. First half was fine, created good chances but didn't finish, and that kind of led to a disappointing second half where they felt like they were still in it because it was only 1-0. They felt like they could get that one goal, and that mixed with you have a very inexperienced back line because Christensen, he's not like he's inexperienced, but he's not as experienced as Silva, Chalaba, and Sarr, both very new to the Premier League. So a little bit of inexperience back there, and Sarr especially looked like he wasn't quite ready for it because there were several opportunities that were created from his side because he's not quite linked up with Chilwell and Christensen. So it was just a makeshift back line that led to a lot of opportunities. Mendy obviously was fantastic. All the great saves. People have talked about him a lot. People have talked about him. Why didn't he get in the Ballon d'Or? Or why wasn't he nominated for it? And honestly, it is something that you don't really see keepers nominated very often. I did see the 30-man shortlist. I think Casillas was on there, but most keepers don't really get recognized for their abilities. And I think Mendy, after all the talk of why isn't he on there, and then all of a sudden he puts up that performance almost in response to all the talk. It was a good performance from him. And then the front line and midfield, pretty disappointing overall from them, mainly because in the second half it felt like we were not getting out. It looked like we were pretty lazy. We were a little slow, trying to push out, trying to get to the ball. Brentford were beating us to basically everything. Lukaku was really, really lazy again that day. And it felt kind of like the Man City result, where it looks like we were not prepared for such a high press. And so whenever we get the ball out, it's like, oh, we just need to stay back. And it just creates so many chances for Brentford because they constantly have the ball in our half. So it was just overall pretty disappointing. But then we turned it around, Malmo in the midweek, and overall good performance. Malmo are not that difficult a team, but we stepped up. Conte in the midfield definitely helped with that. Bit more structure in the back line also helped. And overall, it was a good performance. Good to see everybody working together. The only disappointing part is Lukaku and Werner go out hurt. So now we are without a striker. And that's something I wanted to address first is the transfers. Because I've talked about how disappointing our transfer team can be at times. We have picked up some good ones. Obviously, everybody talks about Havertz. Obviously, came good in the Champions League final against City. But you look at some of the decisions to sell players or to loan players. Sometimes I do question them because, especially this season, you've got Lukaku and Werner, obviously both quality strikers. So Abraham, he and Tuchel didn't really see eye to eye for whatever reason. I don't really know what happened there, whether there's backroom stuff going on or whether Tuchel just didn't rate him very highly. But obviously he needs to go and get first time. So I don't mind selling him. They put a buyback clause in his in the contract. So not bad business there. Giroud also, I kind of get it because I still think he's a great target man and a great finisher, and I think he's quality. But Tuchel prefers a bit more mobility in his strikers, so he wasn't really going to get much time either. So I don't mind selling him. But then you look at, we've loaned out Broja. I don't understand that decision because he's a younger striker. I think he's 18, 19. So he's younger, still growing, probably, not going to see first team time ahead of Lukaku and Werner, but will get the occasional chance. He'll get to grow here. He'll get to train here. And instead, now we've loaned him out to Southampton, which is not a bad decision in the sense of he's going to get Premier League time, and he is starting to start more for Southampton. He scored for them today in their draw. So not a bad decision to loan him out, but for us, it is a bad decision. Because now we are stuck without a striker because we left ourselves with two. We sold Ugbo as well. So sold all these strikers, loaned, Broja. Now we've left ourselves with two. Both of them get hurt in the same game, and now we are without a striker. Now we've got to go with a false nine in there. And Havertz, not really a false nine. As much as Tuchel's played him there, as much as he's tried it out, and we've had 2 games where it succeeded now in the, 6 or 7 that he's tried it. So it's not really something that works very often. So I don't know why we've left ourselves in this hole, in this deficit, where two injuries now can suddenly put you at a risk of not being able to score because you don't have a striker. So a little frustrated with that, but going into the game itself, I mean, 7-0 is a good result, but with a bit of caution because, first of all, Norwich are not a good team. I mean, really looking at their season, it's not a question of are they going to get relegated? It's a question of are they going to win this season? Because I don't know. Look at the other two that are relegation threatened that haven't won a game right now. Newcastle, I mean, they just got their new owners. They'll probably bring in a good manager that'll try to keep them up. They'll make some January acquisitions. They'll probably be okay. I don't know if they'll get relegated or not, but they'll win. They'll get some wins here and there. Burnley, I mean, they probably deserve a win with a couple of their performances. They've done okay so far, but they've been unlucky, and they're a team that'll punch, kick, bite, scratch, stab, shoot. They'll do whatever it takes to get a win. Because that's Sean Dyche's mentality, which is why I don't care if they get relegated this season, to be honest. But with Norwich, I've watched a few of their games, and it just seems like they don't really have an answer. They can't figure out how to score regularly. They can't figure out how to defend without, giving up the attack. So they're stuck in a bit of a rut, and I just don't really see what answers they have. And you throw in today, I think they didn't perform well. I don't think they played us how they should have played us. It's pretty easy to see why this game got away from them. Because typically a team like Norwich, what they'll do, they'll sit in, they'll pack it in, and they'll say, hey, break us down. And honestly, they probably should have done that against us today because without a striker, it's going to be a bit harder for us to break them down. But they didn't. They didn't do that. They didn't pack it in. They looked to press high. They looked to step out, keep us pinned back, and we just passed through them. And there were so many holes, so much good movement. We did well on our part, but I just feel like they didn't really give us a game today. They didn't play us how a team like Norwich normally plays us, which made it easy for us. And that's my bit of caution in saying, like, okay, good result, great result, good performance to go with it, but let's not get ahead of ourselves and say, oh, look how much better we are than everybody else, because this was a pretty easy game for us. Like, they made it easy for us to play well. So that's me trying to kind of balance it out and not take it too much like, oh my God, we're the best team in the world, nobody can ever touch us. Because that leads to performances like the Juventus game. So, but overall, Tuchel, I was okay with. His lineup was fine. His subs were okay. Giving some players like Ziyech and Barkley a chance to get some minutes in, and also giving some more minutes to Loftus-Cheek as well. So overall, it was fine. I didn't have any problems with him today. And then the individuals, just go through them really quickly because nobody really put in a bad performance today. Mendy obviously didn't have much to do. Did well for the one moment he was called in where Chilwell made the bad pass and then Silva wasn't seeing the guy come from behind him. Mendy obviously stepped up in that moment and did well to block the shot. That's pretty much all he really had to do. The back line, Rudiger, made some forays forward because he could, and he's still just very solid. The one thing I will talk about with Rudiger is, of course, the whole contract thing. I don't know a whole lot about it. I know he's asking for a lot, and there's kind of a question of, are they going to pay him that much? I don't know. Because he is a defender that's very useful. He's a defender that's very effective in the Premier League as well. He's strong. He's physical. He doesn't mind putting in a good challenge, and he's got pace as well. So it is kind of a question of, is he worth that much money? Kind of on the edge. I do think he's worth money. I do think he's worth keeping hold of, even if it means paying him a bit more, because he is so effective. You don't want to lose him, and suddenly he goes to another team that is willing to pay that much for him, and suddenly now you've given them Rudiger. But at the same time, is he worth overpaying for him to stay? That's kind of a good question. It's something that needs to be debated. Personally, I mean, I don't know what our finances look like. Like, if we're doing fine financially, if we're not in the, if we're in the black, if we're not in the red, then heck, pay for him, overpay for him. It's fine. Keep him because we need to hold on to him. But if it's a situation where finances are a little, like the balance right now, or they're dipping a little bit, we're not really sure, because I know the whole COVID thing is throwing a lot of these clubs' financial situations into question. Then I could understand them being like, well, we can't pay this much for you. We'd have to like offload some players. So yeah, I don't know. It's very up in the air, and it's something that I feel like the accountants at the club are probably trying to figure out at the moment. But Silva, though, very assured again. Couple off moments for him, just a couple weird passes. One moment where pass came through and he's easily in front of the forward, but for some reason he's telling Mendy to come get it, even though it's not gonna reach even close to the box. And the striker had read that situation, was starting to go to it, but then he figured it out. But it was a little weird because he's typically a bit smarter than that. When he sees that pass come in, he knows what's going to happen. But in that moment, for some reason, he thought it had a lot more pace on it or something. But overall, I mean, he was still fine, still very effective. And then Chalobah, another good game for him. And I'm glad he's getting time. I'm glad he's getting a chance to prove himself this season because he's been effective. And, you've got Silva, don't know if he's going to make it another year in the Premier League. Azpilicueta, you never know how long he's going to have. And on top of that, he's being pushed more at the wing-back position. So it's good to see we've got Chalobah, and especially, too, selling Gahey, selling Zuma. It was a big question of, is somebody else going to step up into this role? And I feel like Chalobah's done a good job of that, so good performance from him. Into the midfield, Jorginho and Kovacic. This is the first time we've gone with Jorginho and Kovacic, just the two of them, I think, in a while. We've done a lot of the three in the midfield. We've done, Conte and Kovacic, Conte and Jorginho. So it was interesting to see the two of them back in there again, because it has been... When's the last time we've done that? I don't even remember. But yeah, both of them did okay. Nothing too crazy, nothing too awful. Jorginho, a couple misplaced passes again, which is kind of expected. But Kovacic, more work from him today, which was good, because he's been a little disappointing so far this season. And yeah, both of them just held down the midfield fine, weren't really called on to do a lot, like, defensively, because there's a lot of giveaways from Norwich's midfield. But they both worked hard, and they both put in a good shift. Chilwell and James on the wings. Chilwell, very effective again. He started to step up some more, because when he first started to get some minutes, he wasn't really doing a whole lot. He wasn't really putting in, like, all of his effort. And considering how Alonso seemed to be in favor, I was expecting him to play more like he has done for the past couple games. But yeah, he's definitely stepped it up over the last few. Gotten himself some goals as well, and just showed what we need at the wing back position. We need work, we need up and down the lines, creating opportunities, creating space, and he's doing that for us, which is good. James was okay overall. My biggest issue with James is still too many moments where he's turned off. We're looking to create, we're looking to make something happen. Players are moving. James is stagnant. When he's not involved, it feels like there's too many moments where I look over and he's just there standing. And if the ball comes to him in a moment, in a flash, I don't know if he's going to be ready to do anything with it. And in games like today, it's not hurting us. It's not a problem. It's not something that's going to make me go, God, do something. But in games where we're struggling, in games where we're playing better teams, in games where it's a lot faster from the other team, he's going to struggle if he continues to play like this. And I don't know why this has crept into his game, but it's something I've noticed, over the past year or so. He's gone from the exciting wingback, young wingback with a lot of energy, a lot of pace. He's kind of gone into I don't need to work as hard. I don't need to bust it all the time. And it's starting to show. It's starting to become more and more obvious to me. So I don't know what that's about, but again, it's why I think Azpilicueta is a better option than him right now, because even though Azpilicueta doesn't really have much going forward, even though his crossing is not the best, his shooting, his passing in the final third is not always the best, he's going to give you 110% work rate. He's going to push himself and push himself and push himself. Whereas James, yeah, he can send in a good cross. He can hit a good shot. He can score. He's great in the final third. But if the ball's not near him, he's not doing anything to help you. He's not moving the defense around for you. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a matter of quality over quantity, I guess. Like quality in your overall play versus quantity of what you're doing in the final third. I'm much more of a quality over quantity type of person, so that's why I prefer a Dave over a James right now. And then the front three, all three of them, did well except for Havertz. It was just Havertz was there. Havertz was involved. He was making good runs, but he wasn't doing anything with it. This was a chance for him to step up and say, "Hey, I can be a false nine. I can, be effective." But he really wasn't, and it just he did open up space occasionally. He did move himself around to kind of put the defense at odds, trying to figure out what he's doing. But overall, I feel like I wanted to see more from him. I feel like I wanted to see him be more involved and be more effective because he should be. In a game against a team like Norwich, he should be our main focus. He should be somebody that's making things happen. But in all honesty, Mount was the one making everything happen. Mount was the one that was on the ball. He was constantly putting pressure. He was constantly creating chances. He scored a hat trick. And I don't know. I mean, not saying Havertz didn't play. Not saying he played poorly. Not saying he was like a 3 out of 10 or anything like that. But in a game where I feel like he should have been a 7 or 8 out of 10, I feel like he's more of 6 or 5. He wasn't really that involved when he could have been. I don't know if that makes sense. It does in my head. But as I'm saying, I'm just like, does that come across my point? I don't know. It's kind of like when you play those FA Cup matches where you give a player a chance to impress, a player that's maybe out of form or hasn't been involved very often. You give him a chance to impress against a lower tier side, and then he doesn't really do much with it. I talked about it with like Hudson-Odoi and Abraham a couple of years ago. They had both dropped out of form. Giroud had stepped into the role. Hudson-Odoi, I think Pulisic had beat him out for his spot. So both of them, when they got their chances to go on and do something, I wanted to see them busted. I wanted to see them go all out and really push themselves and get involved and make stuff happen. And they didn't. They weren't really involved. Hudson-Odoi oftentimes looked pretty lazy. Abraham would occasionally get involved, but wouldn't really do much with the chances. So it's kind of like, why do we want to pick you? That's kind of how I felt about Havertz's performance today. It was a chance against a team that's struggling right now and then also didn't play well against us. He could have done a whole lot. He could have showed his quality. He could have showed why he could be, a third choice striker if, we end up in the situation again where we're without one. But honestly, I'm just still thinking like, yeah, he's a decent player, but he's not really showing how much quality he has when he could be. So, but yeah, Mount, I already talked about him a bit. Obviously very effective today, very involved, making things happen, scored 3 goals. Penalties could use some work. I've never been a fan of just kicking it right down the middle because I feel like, it works like 60% of the time maybe, but most keepers, if they're smart, like they know not to dive so far to the side. So that way if it does go right down the middle, they can just put a foot on it. So I've just never been a fan of those penalties. I prefer the ones that are just tucked into the corner and there's hardly any chance that the keeper gets there unless he actually guesses correctly and goes before you kick or shoot your shot. And then Hudson-Odoi, not quite as effective as Mount, but he was very involved. He was very effective in making things happen, getting past the defense, taking players on. He looks like he's got a bit of adventure about him this season, and it's good to see because he has that ability. He's just not done it as much over the past few months. So to see that he's starting to get that in his game again, a fight and a desire to win the ball and make things happen, it's good to see because he's a good player and he could be more effective for us. So I like the fact that he's taking his chances when he gets them. Whether he's going to be utilized more forward like he was today or whether he's going to be utilized on the wing, don't know for sure. But it's good to see that we have a good option there with him. And then the subs. Loftus-Cheek comes on. He's been playing well. He's been effective, and I've talked about him a bit already this season. I mean, he's looking much more like a player who wants to be involved and wants to play, which is not something I've seen from him in the past. He's been kind of a player that looks disinterested. He doesn't look like he wants to do much, and he gets on the ball, and he looks good, but we need more from you. And right now, that's what he's doing. He's showing that even off the ball, he wants to get involved. He wants to put in a good challenge. He wants to be out there, and that's it's a weird concept of like, oh, what, you think the other players don't want to be out there? Well, based on body language, based on performance, based on work rate. Sometimes there are players that don't look like they want to put in an effort, and Loftus-Cheek has been guilty of that in the past. So to see that improvement has been awesome. And then Ziyech and Barkley come on, and both of them were okay. Neither of them really stood out and did anything that made me think, yes, I want to see more of that. But they were both okay. They were serviceable. Good to see them both get some minutes. I know Ziyech has been kind of suffering from illness, injury, something like that. And he's a player that I want to see more efficient, I guess. More efficient when he's on the ball. Because he's very talented. We've seen his quality. But sometimes it just feels like he's not utilizing that talent very well. It feels like he's not taking on players when he should be, and then when he tries to, it's in a situation where he's surrounded by 2 or 3 guys. So it just seems like he's got to make some better decisions. And then Barkley is just a player that, I don't know. I mean, I'm surprised to see him involved, because I didn't think he would be. I didn't really expect to see much of him this season, but he's gotten some minutes here and there. Sometimes when we shouldn't have seen him, i.e. the Juventus game. But overall, he has those moments of quality where he can step up and do something fantastic. But again, it's very similar to how Loftus-Cheek used to be. When he's not on the ball, I just don't see much from him. I don't see him giving enough for the team. It's when he's on the ball that suddenly maybe he can do something spectacular. But at a team like Chelsea, that's why he's been more effective for teams like Everton or for Villa. There are some players that are like that, that are very much, when they're playing for these smaller clubs, they can't afford to be spectacular when they're on the ball only, because, it's all around them. You look at Grealish at Villa, you look at Zaha at Palace, you look at who's the other one? Mahrez when he was at Leicester. These are all players that, when they were at these smaller clubs where they were the focal point, where they were the main focus, they didn't have to work very hard when they didn't have the ball, because the rest of the team was doing that and then looked to give them the ball. When they go to these bigger clubs where suddenly now you're part of a team and you're not the superstar, you're just another one of the players, now you have to be working harder. You have to be working for the players around you. And Barkley just, in my opinion, never really does that. So he's not a player I typically want to see on the field. I know Tuchel's trying to give him some minutes, trying to give him a chance to impress. But me personally, I just prefer not to see him. But anyways, with all that being said, though, that's about it for this game, and I guess my quick review of the other two. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts in the game today? Let me know. We could talk about and discuss all the good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Chelsea reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.